much for joining me today.
Hi.
So do you want to start with just introducing yourself and your role at CTI?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Freddie Williams. I'm a people partner at CTI Digital. My role covers talent acquisition and equality, diversity and inclusion and well-being. CTI Digital is a digital transformation agency, so we particularly focus in areas of digital. That could be website, that could be mobile, branding communications. If you name it, we're probably doing it right now. And Manchester-based.
Amazing. So we wanted to talk about allyship today. I know that's a topic really close to your heart. Can you start by just describing what it is?
Sure. So, what is allyship? I guess is a really big question, and it's one that I feel is often forgotten when we come to talking about equality, diversity, and inclusion. Allyship is the act of going above and beyond for a community. So, particularly around maybe LGBTQ plus community or the Black community or disabled community, neurodiverse community. It's really about what we're doing as individuals who have privilege, who have platforms, and how we work together to ensure that those people who don't or are in less privileged groups have a platform and the ability to raise their voices on issues, on matters, on being an equal person in the workplace. So.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. I remember you saying it, those people with privilege, it's really important that, yes, they're advocates, but they also speak out if they see anything unjust happening, right? And they're empowered to kind of...
Yeah, it's about really what allyship is. It's about kind of speaking up and saying, okay, well, as a white person, I have privilege. I have this opportunity, but my Black colleagues or my Black friends or my Black family don't have that.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes, I know we talk about it a lot, but some people might not know that. They might not know that they have that privilege to actually talking about it and raising that awareness that they are then an ally to people that are less advantaged.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not get allyship confused with I have to be an advocate, I have to speak on this matter. No, the point is that you, whilst you were there to be, advocate in some senses, that you're like, okay, yeah, I see discrimination, I see that it's an issue. Yeah. It's about what you do to then provide a space for those people to then use their voice to go, okay, this is the problem.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, with that in mind, this month, and it's just actually happened, it's not something we've planned, happens to be Pride Month.
Yeah.
So, I'm bringing it up because we don't want to be performative here, and this is a topic really close to your heart. So, I guess what I wanted to bring up is, why is it so important to you that we carry this conversation on all year round, and maybe we're aware of the traps we can fall into as organisations, as people during Pride Month?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're talking about the specifics of Pride Month, it has become more and more apparent, especially in the last year or so. We're seeing a lot more companies doing really performative things now. When I say performative, I mean, just putting up a rainbow flag during Pride Month, maybe, throwing a few ribbons across the office and maybe boosting up people and going, oh yeah, you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, that's great, let's celebrate you for a few days. And then that's it, they're done. And it's so key, especially in this political climate that we're in at the moment, that we have to ensure that all year round we're looking at policies, we're looking at ways that we can support the LGBTQ plus community better, more specifically trans people, non-binary people. It's not about what you're doing for that 1 month. And if in any way you're kind of like profiting or you're making money off the back of that, then you're not doing a good job. That's bad.
No. Is there a place for Pride Month? Like, is it good to still raise that awareness?
Oh, 100%.
In a concise effort, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is really important because you have to remember Pride is still a protest.
Yeah.
Pride is still a time for us to raise our voices and say, you know, all right, we've had the LGBTQ plus liberation movement or the gay liberation movement, and we've come a really long way in terms of protections and in terms of the Equalities Act, but we still have a long way to go, you know? So Pride Month is a time to do that, but that also needs to bleed into the rest of the year, you know? So you have to constantly be thinking, what can we do as an organization to ensure that our LGBTQ plus staff are protected all year round? You know, what are our long-term goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that kind of like leads nicely into how can we educate the business on this topic? What can they do to actually start to support, you know, staff and create more allyship? But what can we do to kind of educate the business?
I think there is this fear with education and talking about, you know, certain subjects because you're like, oh, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to, you know, put my foot in it, you know? And I think it has to start at the top. First and foremost, has to start at the top.
Yeah.
You, as whether you're a HR professional, an EDI professional, it does not matter. Anyone you start with, it starts at the top.
Yeah.
Because they're the people who have the power. They're the people that hold the purse strings. And however you want to present that, whether that's through 9 times out of 10 data to go, you know, we have this many LGBTQ plus people, you know, and this is what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you give them a whole spiel about it. It doesn't matter, but it has to start at the top.
Yeah.
And then kind of cascading that down, getting them to commit to offering opportunities for people with those lived experiences to present that back to the organisation if they want to. They don't have to.
Yeah.
I personally have done that in my workplace. We ran lunch and learn sessions around pronouns in the workplace. So I did that last year. And that worked really, really well. Yeah, really, really well. And the reaction was great, you know, and then that resulted in us encouraging people to have it on their email addresses, on Slack, you know, having much more open conversations about, you know, how do we protect people in the workplace? How do we ensure that, you know, the level of respect that is required is there?
Yeah.
And how do we make that part of a wider educational piece? So, you know, when I did our strategy recently, you know, I talked a little bit about that, about, you know, kind of extended work that we've already done and training. So that's a huge thing is, I think, once you finish with your SLT or your ELT or whoever, then look at what you can do for the wider staff.
Yeah.
So lunch and learn sessions, supplementary training, getting professionals in, people that know about this stuff.
Yeah.
There is nothing worse than someone coming in and then talking something they don't, or, you know, having someone in the company talking about something they don't actually know anything about.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice that they're trying. I think it's really important you feel you're educated enough. But then that leads back to good allyship. That leads back to ensuring that, you know, whilst you are a good ally, you're still allowing people to have a space to raise their voice, to go, okay, this is, you know, this is what it's like. This is my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that, you know, I welcome as much education on this topic as possible, and that's why I think you and I have spoken a lot over recent months. One of the things that kind of came to my awareness is, how do we raise those voices? And I know some businesses do it differently, but I'm interested that within your role, you have that kind of tag. You're HR, but you also focus on the EDI piece, the neurodiversity piece. I see that a lot happening in HR. And I guess I wanted to know, like, do you think that's an effective way of tackling it? Is it important that we have someone and that's their role? Or, I know we've mentioned about committees. Is that a must?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult, isn't it? Because it depends on the size of your business, first and foremost. How many people have you got that you can realistically do that. In like really small businesses where you may have like, I don't know, 10, well, actually maybe more than like 20 to 50, you might have one person or two people that's like that are advocates for that, pushing that at top level and saying, actually, okay, we need to be focusing on this, or this is an issue. And then I think when you get to a company of our size, so, we're talking kind of 150 plus, we're talking about, having a committee, because we don't necessarily have the resource to have someone who's dedicated on that position full time. But what we do have is we have the ability to set up a committee where you can have multiple people. So you're offering a platform for multiple voices. Because my experience is just one experience. It's not an experience of many. And I think actually even at bigger levels, we're talking about really big companies, you still really need those things like employee resource groups and committees, because actually what that then does is that offers a layered platform. Because if you just have one person, all right, one person to steer it and lead it is great, because you need, I guess it's that representation outside of those groups that you need, because that conversation needs to continue. But actually maybe having that committee is like a really important point. And I think sometimes what might happen is that when you get HR and doing EDI, it can get lost. The message can get lost quite quickly, because let's face it, HR is there to protect the business. It's not there to really talk about the political kind of, the controversial sides of it. And it's very difficult. It's finding that balance, because, they've got to go, I've got to protect the business. Because if it was a discrimination case or something, but then who's in the corner of the person, you're the employee, so I think it's thinking of things like that. And I think actually by having a committee, sorry to go back to my original point, having a committee, in my opinion, is much better, because I think you offer a really layered response to things. Because again, my experience is very different to your experience. I'm non-binary, you're female.
Very true. Very true.
And you might have a really different opinion on something.
Without a doubt. So that committee gives an organisation an opportunity to get the cross section of voices within the organisation. Completely agree. And actually, that's something that, regardless of your size, you can take in part, can't you? You can have different size committees. You can tackle it more and more as you grow.
Absolutely.
With the business.
Absolutely. And we come back to that allyship piece, is that by having a committee, you're undoubtedly going to have someone on that committee that might fall into that community. So then they can educate and they can say, actually for our community, it works like this.
I think that's lovely, because going back to how to educate the business and the lunch and learns, I think there's no better thing than hearing from people within that group that you may want to support more at the time. And like you say, professionals, but actually hearing, and everyone's going to have different experiences, but hearing about your experience and then hearing about someone else's, you mentioned myself being a female, working mum, maybe that's relevant to some people and they want to hear more about it, or people of ethnic minority groups. So
I think it's also really important to remember that these, committees or the employee resource groups, whilst they are there to serve, marginalized people, which is the most important thing. And I think if you're thinking about doing it, great, please go ahead, do it. Really think about what you want from that committee first and foremost. I think that's really important, that you establish with those people what are the ground rules, what are the expectations from this. When we initially set up our committee, I was really clear about, we really want to avoid performative behavior. We are good allies. We're champions of being good allies, because we understand what it feels like to be part of a marginalized community. But it's also about opening that up to people who may not fall into those camps. And it's about ensuring that you're leaving some space for you know, people who may not be part of a marginalized group, you know,
Yeah.
to some extent, you know, and I'm specifically talking about, you know, maybe like middle class white male,
The only category.
a specific category of people, and it's about keeping that window open, because then that gives them an opportunity to come in and say, you know, and listen, but making it clear that that is for them to listen.
Yeah.
It's not there for people to go, oh yeah, but what about me? I'm blah 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 blah. You know, it's about for you to listen, and that's what the opportunity is.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I think that's really healthy, and it adds that balance. But like you say, it just encourages that allyship more and more, and the education piece is so important. So, thinking about that, then, and we've spoken a bit about different kind of backgrounds, what have you. How do we ensure that we're providing that diversity and inclusion, or more so the inclusion for everyone, considering that we've all been on a different journey? And why I mention that, I'll give you an example. If you're looking to, say, train a couple of people in the team, and the leader gives them all the same like online course and expects the result to be the same, you're going to reach the same level of success, you've been given the same tool. Is that fair when we all learn differently?
No. Obviously not.
Very leading question.
No, obviously not. No. And that's where you've now got to split it down to equality and equity.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of the word equity before.
I have. I'm going to say it was on
good.
International Women's Day, you know, when it...
equity,
equality. But I never knew about it before then.
Yeah.
And it was really, really interesting. You
It's
hear like the stool
word.
analogy of, you know, giving them different height of stool because they're different heights to reach the same shelf and what have you. But when you put it into the context of the workplace and you look at learning and development, how that needs to be tailored to each individual, then the penny starts to drop. Why it's so important.
100%. You can't. It's the old. I think it's a picture that I've seen multiple times on the internet. You can't expect a fish to climb a tree.
Okay. Wow. Yes.
But if you said to a fish, a monkey, a giraffe, all of these other things, you know, right, climb this tree.
Yeah. The monkey would get there.
The monkey would get there. The giraffe could get there. You know, because the giraffe is tall enough, but the fish wouldn't be able to, because you've not then provided the equality that they require. Fine. Equality is the same level across the board.
Okay.
You know, providing the same opportunity to everybody. Equity, when we talk about equity, now we're saying, right, okay, I can see that this person, okay, they're fine, but you might require X, Y, and Z, you know? And I think it's really important that we forget that so much, that everyone is so different, you know? We're more than just one thing. We are completely intersectional beings. You know, I might be non-binary, but I also come from a multicultural background. I come from a mixed race family.
Amazing.
You know?
And you wouldn't know that.
No, precisely, yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's about always asking more.
Yeah.
Always saying, you know, how can I learn from this? You know, someone might be Black, but they also might be disabled.
Yeah.
So it's constantly thinking ahead and going, okay, right, so what tools, what spaces do we need to provide these people? Do you know what I mean? I think one thing that I love, and something that we're exploring at the moment, and I say explore and we're doing, is self-identification surveys.
Okay, so what does that entail?
So self-identification surveys would be part of our EDI survey. So each year we'll run one, or we're going to run it every 6 months. And what that means is that we're giving people an opportunity to say, this is how I identify. Because normally when you look at an EDI survey, you get like, are you white? Are you Black? Are you Asian? So on and so forth. So you're essentially giving people options and you're self-electing things for them in advance. Whereas that doesn't work anymore, because we know people are intersectional.
Yeah.
We know people have different needs.
Yeah.
So by making this self-identification survey, you're essentially opening up a really big window and more likely going to get responses to people if you say, right, you tell me what you are or what you need.
That's so interesting. Do they have some guidance around how they fill that out? Because that must be quite a new thing for a lot of people.
The questions would still exist. So you would still have questions around kind of, what race do you identify with? Or do you consider yourself sorry. Do you consider yourself disabled?
Okay.
And then, if they require further support, then they can come and speak to us and we can work through that with them.
Yeah.
But by doing things like that, I think you will open up the ability to support people better across the workplace.
Yeah, because things will come up that you didn't know to ask a question about.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah,
and I think it's thinking of things like that. And I'll be honest, I've only heard of self-identification surveys, last year.
Yeah.
Never thought that was a thing before.
No.
I never went to myself, do you know, that really makes sense. Why did we never do that before? Because again, people are intersectional. How can you say to someone, all right, you're black, that's it,
that's the end of your story? Yeah.
That's all I see from you? No, that's not the situation.
No.
And then how do you expect to then offer really layered support for people?
Yeah.
You can't, because then you're just putting people more and more, you're just disadvantaging people more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we haven't gone into too much detail, but I thought it might be nice actually before we close out, thinking about some of the ways that people can start to, some of the strategies or like actions they can take. Because I think we've mentioned it in part, like committee. You mentioned at the beginning policies, and obviously your committee or your workforce will tell you what they need, so you have to react to that. But what are some of the things that need to be adjusted or reviewed or looked at in order to support a wider section of the workforce?
I think that's a great question. I think, like I said previously, I think you need to start at the top.
Yeah.
Have that conversation at the top. Get your data together.
Okay.
Understand what your workforce looks like.
Fine. So understand your minority groups, how people identify, to know what support they're going to need.
To know what support they need. And then, start conversations with your staff. Say, look, this is really important to us. And if you're passionate about it, then we want you to be involved. But also don't pressure people. There's this whole thing on ROI. I must have return on investment because we're putting money into it, or you might not be putting money into it. Like you want, CEOs want that ROI. They want to see that return on investment, but that's not how this works. That's not what this is about. This is about creating positive change. It's not about money. It's not about, what you might get at the end of it. It's really about creating safe spaces for people. So opening up that conversation and saying, if you're interested, come and talk to us, and having people at top level, bottom level, mid level to come together and talk. And then also, look at providing training, most definitely, with your hiring managers. And start with things like your recruitment is really important. That's huge. Unconscious bias, the halo effect, microaggressions. All of those things, really challenge. And in that training, really start to challenge people on their perceptions, on what they think is normal, and really go, actually, okay, this isn't the case. And I think that's a really good stepping stone. And also getting your money to commit business.
Oh yeah.
Also getting your business to commit money to it.
Right.
I think that's a really huge thing. I think there's this kind of, we haven't got the money to put into it, but how do you expect to create change? How do you expect to provide spaces for people if you're not going to put the time or the money into it?
Absolutely. Yeah, and you say like spaces, obviously we mean like theoretical, but also that could be physical space, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I know you mentioned before certain religious categories may need prayer rooms.
Yeah, we've started that. So we established a prayer room in our workplace. And it doesn't have to be a prayer room.
No.
You know, I feel like sometimes that kind of locks the space out for others. So, you know, a multi-faith room or multi-purpose space, where reflection room where people can go and pray if you're Muslim. You can spend some time if you want something quiet. You know, breastfeeding in the workplace is like huge. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A safe space for women to be able to go and do that.
Absolutely.
You know?
I'm an advocate for that because, as you know, my first job back after maternity, I was doing it in the toilet.
And things like that are huge. And also offering like quiet spaces for your neurodiverse people.
Yes.
You know, and if you don't have the space to do that, you know, we don't have the space to do that, we don't have the desk space, fine. There are always alternatives. Do you have a working from home policy?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, having things like that is really important. And if you're going to bring people into the office, if you're forcing them 4 days a week, whatever it is, what are you doing to then change that space?
Absolutely. You know, we were at that round table recently, a talent curious together.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting hearing everyone's view on how they operate as a business. But one thing that came up was a very male-dominant company, an engineering company, that wanted more women, but didn't have the
do want to provide the facilities
for women.
Yeah.
So it's things like that you're so right. You need to think about your space, what your asks are of your workforce, and considering who your workforce are you providing equal and equitable opportunities for them to succeed in their workplace, at home, in the kind of workload that they have on?
Absolutely. 100%. And I think a good organization with a strong EDI strategy will always be championing that. Will always be striving to have that. You know, I think that's really important. But little things that you can do, looking at your spaces, understanding your workforce, huge. Like, I could not tell you how big that is.
You can't start the strategy without knowing the workforce.
Yeah, precisely. You can't, absolutely not. Just someone jumping up and going, you know, we'll put some flags up for Pride. Again, because this then leads back to being a good ally, you know, by understanding these things and by providing those opportunities, you're becoming a better ally by the day. You know, and I think that's really important.
Amazing. So I've pretty much run out of everything that I wanted to ask you. I think we've spoke at length, which is great. So what do you hope people watching, what do you hope that they've taken away from today?
Sure. I feel like I want people to come away feeling educated on maybe a subject they didn't really know much about. Maybe the conversation of allyship is something that's often forgotten.
Absolutely.
And I would love because people feel they just need to shout the loudest and all this and all that. That's not the case. You know, it's not the case. It's really about being thoughtful and mindful of your marginalized groups and those that you know, don't have the same opportunities. So I want people to feel educated, and also, you know, hopefully to have changed some mindsets around what it means when we talk about EDI.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Freddie.
Thank you.
I hope to see you again soon.
Yes.
Thank you.